The season starts here, the Vancouver Boat Show.
Welcome to the Vancouver International Boat Show virtual seminar series, sponsored by Freedom Marine International Yacht Sales, the premier choice for exploring the passion of yachting. Thank you for joining us. The seminar will begin in 1 moment. If you are having technical difficulties, you can reach me, the online moderator, via the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. Questions for our speaker can be added in the Q&A box, also at the bottom of your screen, and questions will be answered after the slide presentation. It is our pleasure to present Cruising the Pacific Northwest Alaska with Liza Copeland. Over to you.
Okay, well, thanks so much, and look forward to talking to you all today. Well, having spent so many years in the tropics, it was quite exciting to actually take Bagheera north and be by a tidewater glacier. And what a contrast and a change. But the coast here is absolutely magnificent. I live in Vancouver. Before we went long-term cruising, we were racers. We'd done some of the coast, but certainly not all I'm going to talk about today. We've had that joy since that time. So if you want to go, say, from Seattle up to Skagway, the whole of the Inside Passage, it's about almost 1,000 miles. But of course, there's so many inlets and islands and detours, you're going to do far more mileage than that. And if you are thinking of going up there in the season, most people take about 3 months. Everyone seems to leave from down south about May 15th. And that's because they want to get to Alaska quickly and see a lot of it before the fog sets in, because often the fog doesn't lift in the summer till late morning or even early afternoon. So what I'm talking about today is really the dynamics of going up there, and the difficult part, which is going north of Desolation Sound, and then a Cape Caution, and you've got Dixon Entrance further north as well, north of Prince Rupert, all kind of tricky areas. Weather, tides, currents, route planning, they're incredibly important. We are very benign down on the coast here, although there's certainly things we do have to look out for. But once you get north of Desolation, you're really looking to unbelievable currents. Here, which is Gabriola in the Gulf, maybe it gets to 6 knots. Up in Seymour Narrows, up by Campbell River, you're looking at 17 at times. You can get, if you go up Johnson Strait, you're going to have shipping traffic. Maybe we get used to that in Active Pass, but it definitely is something to think about. Logs are everywhere. I think after the recent storms we've had here, judging from all the logs on the beaches here, there are going to be many in the water, and of course many not going to sea. So cruising at night is really not a wise idea, and most of us just plan day trips. Log booms, you have to give way to them with the passes, and they move remarkably fast. And of course, it's always annoying when you have to make a detour around them. But believe me, ending up going between them is not an option. We have so many rocks on this coast. I think everyone finds what they claim is an uncharted rock, but we have good beacons, but you do need to follow the charts carefully. This is actually going into Gabriola Passage, and wow, the number of people we've seen up on this one, or going into Silver Bay is remarkable. Fog we get down south, usually in the fall, but going up north, it's reality, meaning you do require radar. You're going to have a hard time without radar. You may get AIS as well, but the smaller boats aren't necessarily going to have AIS. So it's useful for shipping, useful for the yachts that have it, but as I say, most won't, or they won't have transmit and receive. So working with fog, a huge amount of fog from June on up north, or even before, is something you need to think about carefully. And believe me, even a ferry can get really come out of the gloom very suddenly. So mooring and anchoring, because there's so many old log booms and sunken chains and everything else, it's a great idea to have two main anchors as you go up. An anchor windlass, you'll be in some deep anchorages, so that means chain, probably 300 feet. Have your dinghy anchor. You might want to go exploring and put an anchor down when you go ashore and maybe get some clams or oysters or something like that. A floating stern line, so you can put the stern line ashore, because so many of our anchorages are either steep to or very limited. And always remember, of course, that if you come in at high tide, it's very easy to loop around a tree, but climbing up, if you've tied to the tree at low tide over the slippery kelp and oyster shells and everything, is a different reality. So having a long line, you can bring it back to the boat, or at least bring it back to itself where you can release it. Down below, you're going to get cold. The sole of the boat's going to get really cold. So we ended up buying nice furry slippers. I said, we have a cockpit enclosure too, which is really, really useful. And I set up in Alaska, you could go from the tropics inside a nice cozy enclosed cockpit, step outside to free a sheet or something, and you've gone to the Arctic. It's keeping warm, so you need good heaters. You might have diesel, forced air, propane. It's good to have a plug-in heater as well, maybe a couple, so you get the extremities if you've got people sleeping fore and aft. The galley, you're going to be doing a lot of cooking. I gave a seminar on provisioning on 2 days ago, and I have a book I'll talk about later, which has a lot about provisioning, how to keep food. It's not that you can't get provisions along the way, but a lot of cruising north is getting off the beaten track. And if you want to linger, it's annoying to have to go for provisions. A lot of people maybe have water makers too for the same reason. So get all your regular pans for your oven, measure your oven before you get them. You'll probably be doing quite a bit of baking on board. A freezer is really useful to have, and good catches for when you do those rough passages on all your drawers and lockers, and a good catch on the gimbal stove. So provisioning long-term planning, and so include ideas that are easy if you've got rough seas, and maybe watch them. Make them ahead of time, have snacks for watches, hot drinks, thermoses. Stock up on your dry and canned goods before leaving, so you always have something in the larder. You might have to increase storage. I talked about that, how you can cover in shells maybe with sliding plexiglass or maybe another locker door. And do carry a comprehensive medical kit. There are a lot of bugs up north, so one item particularly is for mosquitoes, black flies, and make sure if you're on prescription meds that you have a good stock of them. So paper charts besides electronic charts. I mean, paper charts, you get through them quickly. Personally, I've had a lot of failures with electronic charts, always a critical time. So it's nice to have. If you don't have that, you can get chart books going up the coast, because it's much easier to plan it when you have more place names. Electronic charts are fantastic when you're close to, but once you get into small shell charts, it's very hard to identify where you are. Lots of nice warm clothing. They're 110 volts, as I say, and as well as independent boat heater. If do have a radar reflector, if you haven't got radar. Fishing gear, you need a license. Licenses are expensive in Alaska. We did a lot of trading for fish up there with the fishermen, but do get your license to go north and have your prawn traps and your crab traps and everything else to go with it, because it's so much fun being able to catch them. An autopilot is so useful. AIS I've talked about, and maybe a backup GPS. Having said that, I really like all my charts. I have an iPad here. I have it in front of me, and I have Navionics on the iPad. And the iPad is a being touch screen. It's so easy to calculate routes and calculate the angles that you need to sail and how distances. And I really recommend you get it if you can't link your radar anyway, or your chart plotter to your Navionics. So I'm going to go very quickly down the Southern Islands because I'm presuming most people have been there. They're absolutely wonderful to cruise if you're a newbie. There's San Juan's in the States, and the Gulf Islands, actually one archipelago. San Juan's are more populated. We're sort of a bit more rugged here, except maybe for Salt Spring Island. About 50 miles from Sydney up to Nanaimo, and just endless anchorages and fun things to do. You've got pubs here in Thetis Island. You've got wonderful market every Saturday in Salt Spring. Gorgeous, gorgeous produce to be had. Chemainus has lovely theatres, a really funky town to visit. And you get up to Nanaimo and you can anchor off Newcastle Island, which is marvellous. Wonderful walks there and the fun things going on. Now, all the way up the islands in the summer, they have fun events. So do look them up. If you're cruising that way, it's really fun to be part of the community and see these things happening. And it will really get you into more of the culture and the personality and the people of the coast as well. A lot of native culture as well, and so do seek that out because it's extremely interesting. So as we head north, we can go up. We can go up to Malibu Rapids up here in all the way up the arm here, which is great. We can go here. Comox is a great place to stock up before you go north, although you can get provisions in various places in Desolation as well. And so we head up, and here we're going up the inlet all the way to Prince Charlotte Sound. Chatterbox Falls, which is actually a dock here as well. Really interesting people. You can go for great hikes. A nice diversion along the way, or you can visit the Harmony Islands as well. And then you get up further towards Desolation, Prideaux Haven. Well, last year when I was there early in the season, we could actually get in there. But it's the whole Laura Cove, all that area. But there's so many areas in Desolation you can go to and explore. You can go out for dinner if you want in various places. You've got, as I mentioned, shopping. This is Harriet Bay. There's a great supermarket up the road. And you've got a lovely spit right opposite. And this is where we had a group there at once. What were we going to do the last night? One in 2 traps, we got 210 spot prawns. And these are big jobs. They were so good. And everyone was just delighted. So people say, oh, it's pretty benign here. And I just want to point out that here we have Tony Gooch, who left it solo, non-stop around the world. Victoria, he's from this part of the world, although originally Australian. And you've got Jeanne Socrates, a Brit, and she also actually, she's twice all the way around the world, solo, non-stop. And they love cruising these areas. This was the Pardies. The Pardies had a bit of a trouble with our strong currents, of course, because they didn't have an engine. So this is the tricky bit. You now want to go north of Desolation Sound. So how are you going to get there? Well, the weather, prevailing winds are northwesterly, but of course they go down the channels. And the current is another factor, a very strong current. And then you've got Seymour Narrows here. Tricky to go through and do plan to go through at slack water. And they're very good in the cruising guides. You've got the Wagoner, you've got several other cruising guides, Dream Speaker guides, and many other, Peter Basilopoulos writes them, many others who'll give you the strategy for going through them. They tend to be lighter winds in the morning and build during the day. So if you're going north or you're angling west, then you want a really early start if you're doing that. And there are places you can pull into. You've got West Thurlow here and Blind Passage. You can go up Port Neville, or you can go as far and then pop in to the whole Broughton's area, and you end up in the Lagoon Cove. So a lot to think about. Now, the alternative is to go the back route, which we tend to do, and certainly on the way up. So you go into the Yucatán, through the Yucatán Rapids. This is Stewart Island, renowned for its fishing. You can actually stay in Big Bay for the night. And then you got through Dent, and you've got more minor rapids as you go through here. And you can come out. And 17 miles later, you can go to Port Neville, or if the wind and current are with you, then you can all come all the way through and pop in to the Broughtons. So communications, a lot changes when you get north of Desolation Sound. Firstly, the temperature goes down. Temperature up in Port McNeill is usually 5, if not 10 degrees colder, sometimes than Vancouver. The water's cold. Even oysters don't appear. The bush comes right down to the ocean. So it's harder to get ashore to take a walk. And you really feel you're into a different method of cruising, a different zone of cruising. So it's important to know how to call distress if you want them. There's good Canadian Coast Guard presence. I hope you all know how to use your DSC radio, your VHF, and you've got your MMSI number. So if you do have distress, you can put your emergency button and it'll come quickly. The cell phone coverage is extremely poor. And really a lot non-existent, and data, of course, goes with it. Wi-Fi you can only get in a few places. Ham SSB radio net is hard to get on, but there is one that exists. And then you've got communication devices, the modern way, that is a cheaper satellite way. You've got InReach, where you can, it's on the Iridium system, and you can send and receive messages. You can put out a position report. Spot is on the Global Star system, and it has more limited function, but still is good. And of course, you can get satellite phones. Now, do remember that your satellite phone needs sky. You know, if you're going up and you've got high mountains either side of you, the range is very limited. And it's the same with VHF, although they have very good VHF relay for weather forecasts all the way up the coast on the weather channels. You will find VHF is line of sight. So if you've got a mountain in the way, you won't get it. So if you're going to a crucial area, always make sure you go to a part in the passage or down the channel so you can actually get reception. So you need really warm clothing. This is when you're going to get your good heavy duty weather gear, and nice fleeces to go underneath, and long johns maybe, and everything else. It'll warm up during the day, but it can get cold as well. And the wind factor, of course, on our cold water, the chill factor always seems so icy. I just wanted to put this in there because so many cruisers have dogs, and at this area there aren't many places to take dogs for a walk, and so do think of that. If you've got a dog like this, an Aussie Shepherd, that needs runs twice a day, you're going to be a bit challenged. So this is just actually on avionics, but it just shows you all the black areas, shows you all the rapids, and so, you know, there are a lot of areas. This is hole in the wall. This is going up the Yoklata's and Dent. This actually is the hole in the wall picture. Now, we were leading a rally of 22 boats, and we went through a hole in the wall, which is sort of just coming out of Desolation Sound to go down, coming to the Octopus Islands. And we went through with 2 knots of currents with us. But the time the last boat went through, they had knot against them. It changes quickly here, and it can be difficult. This is Johnson Strait, a pretty straight, and you get Discovery Passage and Johnson Strait. Oh, I don't know, in total, they would make about 90 miles. You know, quite a long trip. You're going to probably stop on the way. The actual straight part is less, of course, and it'll take you up there. When you get to the head of Johnson Strait, there is a whale preserve area, and you do see a lot of, you're going to be seeing orcas, you're going to be seeing humpbacks, and you'll see tons of humpbacks as you go up the coast. So here we are in Dent, and you see the water's just going down, and it's time to go through, and then we're going to hang around the corner to the right into Big Bay. And this last time I went up, we set off the next morning. And this was our treat the next morning. There were also a lot of bald eagles in the trees, but this was my classic photo of the moment. And here they are, the sea lions. So it's fun to go into what facilities there are. This is Shoal, and Mike, who can run a little bar, was actually walkabout on the island that day, visiting neighbours. And so we gathered there. These seats are great, you know, the fold-up seats. They're so comfortable, and it's a way of gathering on the dock. But when you can see that, chat to the locals, you really do need these personalities of the coast. But if you're going north, you're all going to these. We hung out with these boats a lot because you all get to the pass about an hour before tide turns. It's not a state of science, a turning tide. You just wait till the water looks right. And then you can all get together. So in some ways, you kind of get your buddies of cruising, and it's really fun when you've been seeing each other for a while to actually hang out at happy hour. Here we got Blind Channel, and this actually is into 4 generations now in West Thurlow. Wonderful walks, the big tree to go to. I think the grandparents or great-grandparents who started it, the gravestones on the tree, and they have facilities, a store, you can have dinner, they got a store, and it's a lovely place to go. And then you go on and up into Desolation, as I said, and you go into the Broughtons. And if you start weaving your way through, there's quite a tricky channel to go through as well. So watch the current in that, and the big rock that many people have found, you end up in Lagoon Cove. And Lagoon Cove dates back quite a while. In fact, my husband's business partner latterly used to disappear every summer, and we thought he'd sort of gone to the moon, but actually he was helping with this facility, Lagoon Cove. And it's great. They've got docks. A couple from the States took it over a couple of years ago from Bill and Jean. Bill sadly passed away. He was a great personality and always had his bear stories. But the docks are looking great, and there were a few of us there last summer. This was Bill's sense of humor of how to get his firewood cut. The cruisers definitely need exercise. He's built beautiful trails, but take your bear spray with you. A good workshop, and happy hour, they always have spot prawns. They always seem to be able to get them in the bay. So there's gorgeous sailing in the Broughtons, fantastic scenery. You've got little islands, you've got the big Gift Island in the middle. It is wet up there, though, at times, and dank, but how fantastic it is when you go ashore. This is a great forest walk we did, and reflections, of course, galore. I think we must be the area of the world, the best area for reflections. And if you're very lucky, and this is actually quite unexpected, on our way to Lagoon Cove one time, we saw grizzly bears, and they were quite cute. They climbed up, and we could see from the bushes waving where they were, and they popped along the top of this little islet, in fact, and the little cub kept on popping up. Mum would go, get down, and you could just, it was so human. The cub would go down, and then in the end, they came out from among the bushes, and it was just fantastic. Now, we had seen opposite there on our way up north. Unfortunately, the fog cleared quickly because it was dense when we saw the grizzlies. And we went to this little old place where the missionaries had gone, and I think the final First Nations had to leave there in the 1920s. They had one potlatch too many, and they all went to Alert Bay. But we went ashore, and I wanted to pick some of the fruit that's still on the trees, the orchards, but we were a bit spooked by bears then, so we didn't. But we were trying to pick the berries along the coast. They had gooseberries, which of course we don't normally get here, brought in by the missionaries. Anyway, we were just going back to Bagheera, and I noticed, where you see the little islet behind her, that actually the bears were swimming towards us. So we got in the dinghy, and my son's girlfriend, now wife, sort of, and I was saying, oh, let's get back on the boat. And Duncan, who's in forestry, said, oh, no, you know, grizzlies are fine and never attack you from the water. And they swam right behind the dinghy. I mean, it was awesome. But what was interesting is they went ashore, they took off, and then all those berries we couldn't reach, they just happily sat on their hindquarters and reached the berries and picked and had a feast. And we realized that we had been at an anchorage called Dead Point the night before, where there'd also been a homestead, and they were just going from one source of food to another. So Mamakula is the famous Indian village, and it was not really open. I think it opened later in the season. You do have to pay to go here. This is a classic arch. and the old houses that were here. And of course, everything goes back to nature. It's so nice that the First Nations are carving these days. And I have to put this picture in because here is this washing machine, and it's identical to the one my mother had in England when I grew up. I mean, can you believe it? So this is called New Vancouver, one family. They have beautiful homes here. When we went here a few years ago, they just put up these totem poles. And here we're back. So here's Guildford Island. I was mentioning Lagoon Cove would come down here. We saw the grizzlies about here. You can go up all the way around. There's a resort Quartzy, you've got Lacey Falls, you've got Echo Bay, where you've got Billy Proctor, you may have heard of, and what is known as Pierre's. And that actually was sold last season. He was sort of handing over to some First Nations, and they weren't open when we were there, or barely open. You got Port McNeill is a great place to shop. Alert Bay is in here, and then you've got Sontula, Utopian Society on Malcolm Island. And these are called the Broughton Archipelago. And it wasn't actually till the 90s that an article was written about them, and they decided to call the whole area the Broughtons. But anyone who grew up here would calls himself a North Islander as compared to being on Vancouver Island. So absolutely the Birdwood Group, absolutely gorgeous little anchorages, pretty weather dependent, not that large, great fishing. Blackfish Sound is where Billy Proctor made his name, and wonderful kayaking. So do take your kayaks on board. Inflatable are best, I guess, but whatever. And here's Lacey Falls, actually named by the Douglases when they were up here. And really great. And you can go up and climb up to the big tree beside if you want. So we went into Viner Sound. I had to go in here. Part of my maiden name was Viner. Anyway, we got really close to a black bear. And black bears you don't have to worry about too much. Chat away and then normally go away, or take your can and shake your rocks, and you see lots of them going up the coast. But I have to say, my husband was far better in seeing the rocks that move compared to what looked like a black bear, but just was a rock. He's coming round. Here's we've got Echo Bay and Pierre's, and he's done a wonderful job. He's the one with the big long beard, and I'm not sure if he'll be up there this year or not, but he was around last year. You can walk across to Billy's wonderful museum of stuff he found on the beach and talk about the fishing. And he's done, having been the ace fisherman, he's done a world of good in trying to curtail fishing so it's realistic to the stock. So here we go. And white-sided dolphins are everywhere. We're coming into another shoal, but actually they are closed at the moment. They're a rustic resort that's closed. Sullivan Bay has a lot of the old float homes and big for fishing. Lots of American small craft flying in all the time, but of course not last year. But fun to go, nice restaurant and shop there, and good place to stop. Now, there's a lot of controversy about fish farms, but you can go and tour a fish farm. And I have to say we are very impressed with it, like the effluent or the antibiotics that go in the water, but they seem to be working on a catchment system for that. So I don't know. To me, it's really important we don't fish out our oceans, but it's also very important that we don't pollute our oceans. They farm Atlantic salmon, which are more succulent salmon than local ones, but apparently because our local ones, they do a bit of local, but they're more cranky apparently. So here we're going into Alert Bay and this wonderful graveyard. I mean, it's just amazing. All the tombstones there, great museum. The residential school, by the way, is next door, the old one. But this museum is done by the local people. It's just great. A wonderful ecological walk, actually, on a boardwalk at the top. And then on to Sontula, which was started by a group of Finns. They were working the coal mines in Newcastle Island and had it with being bossed around. So they found this magical spot, and of course there was lots of fishing, and they're very artistic. They don't have a government, but so they're still utopian society, but they sure have a lot of committees, but they're very welcoming. There's a marina here and a store, and it's just lovely to go and wander around. So Port McNeill, an old logging town, but just absolutely great for stocking up, very convenient. Take your cart down to the boat. There's the town marina. There's also North Island Marina where you can get fuel, which a family run. They're also always very friendly. And the airport is between Port McNeill and Port Hardy if someone's coming to meet you or leaving from there. We've always had wonderful sunrises and sets when we're up in there. This is something, there's so many bald eagles, but this is when you hope it's not on your boat. So Port Hardy, not quite so accessible, but there is a marina you can walk into town, or they do put often docks out by town in summer. Stopping there is good. And then lovely God's Pocket, Bill and Jane, who ran it for years and years, have moved on. The new owners I didn't meet a couple of years ago when I was up here because it was pouring with rain and we didn't actually go ashore. But Bill and Jane were always very hospitable going in. And they have they have wonderful diving, the deep diving there. So they have many tour groups, a lot of naturalists coming in. And it's a place that you can consider watching weather. Well, you'll be watching weather anyway now, whichever you're going, and you may leave from here. But you also may go up to Hope Island and Bull Harbour. So now we've got a choice where you're going to go. You're going to go around Vancouver Island, in which case you've got to go around Scott here, which can get pretty rough because you've got an outflow. You've got an outflow from all these inlets on the ebb tide. And you've got the inflow here from the prevailing wind and current. And you've got a continental shelf. So this is why this area is always so tricky, going to Cape Caution or coming around here because you're basically always into wind. But you don't, or you're into current, I would say. So you need to time it carefully with the floods and the ebbs when you come round. Cape Caution is here, and again, you have this problem of the conflict of the tides. So you have to go on the right tide, so you don't get the conflict. If you're going up to Charlotte's, then you're going to cross a narrow bar called the Narwiti Bar, and that's it's going to be it's about 140 miles, so it's probably going to take you a day, 24 hours or a bit more to get up there to the southern end. You have to apply to go there now. You have to Supernatural BC, and you're given a time slot, and you have to go through an orientation before you can go there and pay quite a hefty fee. So here we are in Bull Harbour, and you can walk across to Queen Charlotte Strait and just see the state of the weather. The dock's an old fisheries dock. It's actually, your $20 will be collected by the First Nations in the homes there. And wonderful growth under the dock. I sort of wondered at 11 o'clock at night, leaning over the dock to take these, after a couple of glasses of wine, but live to tell the tale. And look at all those anemones, they're just magic. So here we're going out to Cape Scott, and we go inside the bar. And going inside the bar is, you can do, the trouble we found is there's now a lot of kelp. Because the sea otters are eating the sea urchins that at the kelp. So we had a couple of times when the kelp kind of got round our keel, and it was like an octopus clinging onto us. And then the propeller would cavitate and then you'd shoot ahead. Anyway, you go around and you can see by this picture that there are lots of rocks. And for some reason, often the weather forecasting actual wasn't working at Cape Scott. But anyway, you listen to the other actuals and off you go. If you're going up to the Charlottes, you need to watch weather and tides over the bar. Hopefully you'll get a nice sail up there. We certainly did that. We actually saw the shearwaters, the birds, when we were going up there, and reminisced how we'd last seen them as mutton birds in New South Wales, Australia. So you really are into ocean cruising. The other way is you're going to come to this Cape Caution, and so this you're going to be across the wind and the current when you go. There is a sea otter buoy that is a critical one. If it's calm there, you're kind of pretty well good to go. And again, you're really watching weather for a few days. Some people wait for a week that like calm weather. Other people also come and sort of coastal cruise up here. But you do get huge outflow, particularly at spring tides. So Windy Bay is the popular area to come to, and it's a big anchorage, absolutely gorgeous at night. And lots and lots of cruising here. And this is why you need to provision, because you'll be off the beaten track. This is an old float home. There are little places you go into and maybe use the Wi-Fi. Be aware that a lot of places are on satellite Wi-Fi, so you're limited, and you certainly can't do WhatsApp or FaceTime or send photos. All that takes a lot of bandwidth. Hakai is just wonderful. It's got the Tula Foundation, which is 12 years old now, and started by someone from Port Alberni, in fact, married to a British one, and they have done amazing work here. They're very welcoming to yachtsmen. This is the old fishing lodge, and they have a lot of seminars here, a lot of science things going on here, a lot of First Nations visits, lots of fun to walk around, beautiful walks out to 6 beaches, and this is North Beach. And just gorgeous. And you can come up from the inside, so you have a really calm anchorage as well. And it was going out of this the last time that we had a magnificent display from a very frolicky humpback whale. This went on for about half an hour, and it was just absolutely fantastic display. The problem is, of course, you never know exactly where they're going to come up, and you want to zoom in, but you spend your time spinning your camera around. Namu was an old cannery, and there was a couple here who had a lot of docks, but they've taken them up to Kilizzy Cove now, and so we. I'm just looking at the time. Time is going on here. So it's going on and we get up the coast. Ocean Falls you can visit. Shearwater is where everyone hangs out, and the boating facilities. You can go across to Bella Bella, and lots of good fishing. We really enjoy Bella Bella. Fuel. They have wonderful museums to go and see as well. And then you make your way up, and you've got beautiful Kynak and all the way up to Alaska. So now we're getting into areas that will probably have more fog. We've got Clem too. BC Ferries actually comes through here, and we were waiting for fuel. Absolutely beautiful. We were taken around the gorgeous longhouse they have, and the white bear, which is sort of a mutation of a black bear, walked over the foundations. The Fiordland, Kynoch, all absolutely beautiful, stunning waterfalls, and lots of dolphins. Good fishing, but remember to get your fishing license. Poor Mick didn't and was caught. Butedale, again, another cannery, and various caretakers go in, as you can see, and they get everything running for their own use. More humpback whales when we get up to Hartley Bay. And Hartley Bay was the closest native village to Queen of the North going down. So they got some money from that, and they built a wonderful, absolutely so moving cultural centre and workshops. Coast Guard boat in presence. Here's another black bear, and you get up to Prince Rupert. So Rupert, you've got this yacht and rowing club, and actually if you go on the docks at the end, there's this crabs for the asking. There's also a public marina you can go to, and it's where again you've got another situation of a lot of current coming out from the shore on the ebb current, meeting with the ocean current in Dixon Entrance. It's another time when you're going to be watching weather. It's about 90 miles to Ketchikan, so the Americans like to know when you're leaving. They understand you'll take 2 days, and once you get across their anchorages. But there's lots to see in Rupert, and good stocking up. So here we have Dixon Entrance, and then you start making your way up, and you get to Ketchikan and Wrangell, St. Petersburg, and then you start into Fiordland, into fjords. So here we go, Ketchikan. All the cruise ships have to check in here, by the way. But this is the old Creek Street, and you can go up to the salmon hatcheries. And we were there once in fall, and they were all the salmon. Oh, they look so ravished as they were swimming up the river. And of course, they die after they spawned. It seems very unfair. Dollies and going up further. Now we're into just a lot of miles. It tends to be very calm. You're lucky if it's clear. The trees are much smaller, so you don't get so many logs. We were doing long days. So, we're now the end of May, June, and it's not quite a 24-hour day of light, but almost. Getting up to Wrangell, a lovely welcoming town. The fishing fleet just ready to go out. They normally start in June, and going round and little island with carvings on. Here they are, the fishing fleet. And then you can go up, and this is the Wrangell Channel. Now, this is the Alaska Highway that leads from Bellingham, and you can go on a passenger, or it's also delivering supplies. So it's stop on, stop off, and you can hop on, hop off. And the sea lions, they're noisy and very smelly, let me tell you. Don't be downwind of them. St. Petersburg, they have nice events to go to in summer. And then round the corner, it's Tracy Arm. And there is an anchorage at the entrance, but the birds can come in. So you hope they don't, because it's the most convenient. Cruise ships, just 3 go in a day, morning, noon and night, so you can time your visit around there. And it was just magnificent going out. We had a lovely sunny day. Look at the glistening bergs. And you've got South Sawyer, which you can't get into, too much ice, but you can to North Sawyer. And there we are by Tidewater Glacier. So and of course they're blue. They're absolutely magnificent. So this is glacier ice. It supposedly never melts. And so the trick is everyone always says, oh, I'll just have another gin and tonic while my ice is still around. Anyway, here's Andy. She was quite funny. His kids gave him this Disney sweater, and then the Disney ship, with the Mickey Mouse funnels went by behind. And coming up, and we're in Juneau. Juneau can only be, you can only come in by water or by land. It's quite a long inlet. So most people go to the north, around the north, because you can't get all the way through the north part of the channel, and they go to Walk Bay and Mendenhall Glacier. It's quite a magnificent site. And again, a popular place for 2 cruise ships. And finally, you'll make your way up to Skagway. And Skagway is, of course, the whole gold rush and the trail. Last summer I was up there, and it was really fun to take the winding train up there, and then we bicycled down from 6,000 feet, and really fun. Now, just across from there to your west is Glacier Bay. People always said, well, why didn't the old cartographers mention it? Well, of course, it wasn't there. It was iced in. So you go in, again, you have to have permission. They allow 25 yachts in. They don't give all that permission in advance. You have to wait sometimes when you're up there. But it's just quite magnificent to go in. You get your orientation at the lodge, and then this wonderful water as you go up. And this is our favorite Reed Inlet. The cruise ships don't go in here. We walked up here without bear spray, and it was only later when the cruise ships were saying, oh, I've seen a couple of grizzlies around the corner. We said, oh, bear spray. But it's quite beautiful. And this is just sort of the same glacier around the corner. And they make areas where you might see bears. And we just enter one of the brown areas, and there's a bear for my friend I was with who hadn't seen them. So this is always, it's too clear when you get that, and the weather, it will fail. The halibuts are absolutely huge. So we were lucky to see the humpback whales bubbling. This is when they come up and they catch all the herring. It's sort of like a net. Again, hard to get a photo, but we waited around and did. So this is where I learned that if you don't have a fishing license, you can do some bartering. And all they wanted for both these 2, salmon and halibut, was a bottle of wine. So I gave them 2. I thought that was the generous thing to do. And see, Andy's a very happy camper. And then we're going out Peril Strait, and this is not what we expected at all. And but here it is, beautiful weather. And we're going out to the west coast to visit Sitka. Puts on quite a bit of miles. So now you've got the sea otters, and they're so lovely with their furry faces as they paddle away from you. Sitka is just magnificent. A little bit touristy on one street, cruise ship once a week, but wow, you get the real history of the Indians selling to the First Nations, selling to the Russians, and then the Russians to the Americans. Of course, Canada turned it down, and we look at it now and think, how could they do that? But they did. And a lot of history here, a lot of museums. You can kind of see the Russian influence on the totems, and totem walk is fascinating. The old Russian Orthodox Church, or I think that's a rebuild. We went in, you stand up, it seemed to go in forever. And you can go round Baranof Island, go to Oceanside or Baranof Island on the west. But remember, all those waves now have come from Asia. And wow, there's a lot of backlash. And we found it quite rough and quite windy down the coast. But we could pop in, and this is round the corner, and this is Telegraph. And there's a resident population here. We met the 3 girls who just graduated from high school. They were very excited to be going to college in Juneau. And people live here around, and the fishermen. And as we were there, the spring salmon and the king, as they call it, started. And wow, they were bringing in a haul. So on the way down, be careful. This is a tug and barge. We reckon this was about 3/4 of a mile apart. You need to see them, and it's hard in the fog. You have to watch them on the radar screen. I don't have time to come down the West Coast today. It's a long way, and I've just about got through that on time. But I would like to say that I have books. The book that, or 2 books, but really only, to be honest, the first couple of chapters into the Pacific Northwest in Comfortable Cruising. It'll then take you south and all the way down to Mexico and to Panama and up the Western Caribbean and to Maine and Nova Scotia. But it does open up a whole nother dream. Other than the Oregon coast, it's mainly day sailing, although in good weather you can day sail that too. And you can leave the boat, come back and work and go back down again. So it's all very, as I said, comfortable. Cruising for Cards, I've just updated, so I did it at the end of 20. So basically, it's really on top of all the information. So if you're looking for communication devices, or you're looking for radars, or you're looking maybe at water maker ideas and the different types, or you're looking at living on board, extending your storage, all that provisioning and planning, along with a whole lot more, from buying a boat and equipment to living the life. It's all in Cruising for Cards. I have it in ebook form. And in fact, I've just launched all of them in ebook form as well. So you can go onto my website and make sure that when you go into Amazon from my website, that you click on the Canadian side. You do save a lot of money that way. And someone told me you might have to pay for postage. I'm sorry about that. I don't know why they charge it $5, but you have saved compared to going to the American site. And so do go back take a look. Just in Still Cruising, we bought a boat in Europe and a 2-year plan, and then we ended up going around the world. We just kept on going and kept on going. So Just Cruising is your wonderful areas you may want to charter, whether it's, I know, the Med, the Caribbean, South Pacific, and Still Cruising is off the beaten track, Indian and South Atlantic Oceans. So do get out there cruising. Cruising is a wonderful life. I know last year, people moved a lot of their offices on board, and people were out for 2 months and more, which made actually the anchorages more crowded than some people thought. But do get north. You need time. You need to watch weather. You certainly need to watch those swift currents and go in slack water. But it's wonderfully rewarding to go up there, and particularly as far as Alaska. And then, of course, you've got the West Coast as well. So I'm going to open it to questions, and please feel free. And our moderator is going to read them out.
Okay, so we do have a couple of questions, and please feel free to add any questions into the Q&A box for Liza. First up is Todd. He asks, what are good resources to plan a route from Seattle to Valdez?
I think what you really need to do is to read everything you can. The Wagoner Guide, it takes you from Seattle, and it takes you up to Ketchikan, and Boat Journal as well. And they all give you all the specifics along the way. And you need to prioritize what you want to see. And I think that, and prioritize your time as well. These chart books, the cruising atlases, you've got 1 and 2. They're really good to look at because you get an overview, a really good picture overview. And so you can see maybe what you want to target. I also think that it's really interesting to allow yourself time to see every aspect of the coast. Some people just want to get to Alaska. And really, for me, the most wonderful part is the part north of Shearwater and Bella Bella up to Ketchikan, the whole Kynok area, going to Klemchu and then going later to Hartley Bay. Just wonderful, wonderful experiences. So the meeting with local people and finding out, about their lives as well. And so, you've got all the wildlife and those characters of the coast. I mean, Billy Proctor goes back to you fished in summer and you cut your one log down in winter. So plan your priorities, and there are certainly a lot of cruising guides to the individual parts of the route. The Wagoner and Journal cover them all, and do get an overall map. Even if you buy one of those long ones you can put on your wall, just to see how realistic. And you can go on your iPad if you've got Navionics and start actually seeing what distances you're looking at, because it always starts looking very small until you start doing it, and then it's very big.
Okay. Next question from John. Liza, you mentioned paper charts. I understand Canadian Hydrographics is ceasing producing the paper charts.
Oh, I mean, our regular Canadian paper charts, and something we all use. Actually, they're very good chart books as well. The problem with electronics is electronics are fickle. They're not a happy marriage with salt water. You might have a problem with your battery, and there's some tricky places. So it's really good to have some kind of, in my opinion, and of course I come from a history of only having paper charts, but believe me, I love my electronic ones too. It's really good to have some kind of backup, even if you have just a big small scale chart of the area. But that's why we ourselves, and because we've got them, we always carry the paper charts, the Canadian charts with us. But other people saying that you don't do that, need to do that. I got so many electronic backup, it's going to be fine. It's just where your comfort zone is.
Okay. Keith asks, which cruising book do you recommend for the Alaska trip?
Which of whose cruising? Are you saying of mine or of other people's?
I'm assuming yours, or if you don't have one, maybe you could recommend one.
Okay, well, the cruising guide I mentioned, as I say, is the Wagoner, which is updated every year, and I believe the Boat Journal is too. For individual area, Dream Speaker do a wonderful job. Peter Vasilopoulos does a wonderful job. If you go on the Boat Show website and you go, we're listed under BC Marine Authors, but I think it's probably easier to find us under books. You'll see everyone's books listed and you choose the one that's going to help you most. Everyone has something slightly different to say. I would say my book, Cruising for Cowards, will give you a lot of really useful, up-to-date technical and lifestyle information. And if you want to read a quick overview, somewhat like I've done today, you'll find it in Comfortable Cruising. But it's something to study. Once you get this north of Desolation Sound, there are a lot of things to think about. So, and do remember to go early enough. The other thing is, if you like warm weather, a lot of people will go early and then they make sure they're back in, say, Desolation by August to get some sun and warmth and actually wear a pair of shorts. Now, it doesn't mean to say you're not going to do that up north, like we were in Peril Strait, but the chances are that maybe you won't.
Okay. Randy asks, what is your preferred source of weather info in places where there isn't cell and VHF coverage?
We rarely use the weather channels. It's very rare that you can't get VHF coverage if you work at it. You know, you normally, if you just go to the mouth of the inlet, you can get it. They update them 3 times a day. They do a really, really good job. You know, if you start going on to computer sources like predict wind, they're not usually, I have found, quite as localized. Now, a source for weather that a lot of people up north use, and I have found very useful, is the Norwegian one, which I always call YRNO. It's YR.NO. My son happens to, my eldest son lives in Norway, and he says it's .no. But anyway, whatever you call it, it gives you very localized weather. For example, I talked about we were in Dead Point the night before we saw the grizzlies, and they specifically gave us weather for Dead Point. It happened to be raining hard that day, and they said the rain would end at 4 o'clock, and it did. Now, that's not going to be that accurate all the time, but certainly a lot of my friends who live up north say they do a really good job. Otherwise, as I say, listen to the weather channels, and you'll have to flip around because as you go up north, they're covered under different ones. And you always find the French before the English if you're English speaking, and I'm sure vice versa. But work at it and you'll find them. And they do a good job.
Okay. Timothy asks, how much time do you spend sailing versus motoring?
I kind of avoided that one, you know. Basically, we when we went to Alaska one summer, I actually counted one time, and we were gone 3 months, and we put up the sails every day. And I think there were only 3 days when we didn't do some sailing. But other people will say they only put the sails up 3 times because there was no wind. It depends how purist. When we were at Shoal and we were on the dock there, the guy on the dock on his boat was from Seattle. He was a photographer, and he'd taken the summer off, and he sailed everywhere, but it took time. I was tacking backwards and forwards up to Pruth and everything else. But it depends what speed you're prepared to go, how low you're prepared to go. I'm prepared to go to 4 knots. I think Andy probably would turn on the engine at 5 knots. So yeah, you have to work at it to sail.
Okay. A question from Pierre. Hello, Pierre. From Pierre in Montreal. Is heating in the cabin on a boat a situation in cold weather you must back up?
Say that again. I'm sorry, I didn't quite get.
Okay, so he's asking, is heating in the cabin on a boat a situation in cold weather you must have a backup?
A backup in cold weather. I'm sorry. For some reason, your questions are coming over in quite a fuzzy way. A backup for what?
I think he's referring to another heater or another way to heat the cabin.
So, absolutely. I mean, have your boat heater, and but boat heaters, even ESPA, you know, blowing air. It depends how your boat is laid out. I was cruising last summer, and I was cruising with friends up north, and I had the forward cabin, which was right on the waterline, well, below the waterline, I guess, but you know, the floor was right at water level. It was a deck salon, so they had a raised main cabin, and their cabin was over the engine, and so they were all very warm, and I went to bed despite my heater blasting out. I was in the icebox. So a backup heater. So if you're to dock, Plus, if it's been raining a lot and the boat seems damp, having a backup plug-in fore and aft will really get that boat dried out. And this is when it's a good idea not to have 100% cotton sheets, by the way, because they'll always hold the dampness. Have a bit of polyester and they'll dry more quickly. So backup heaters, I think, are essential. And also an enclosed cockpit is very nice.
Okay, last, it's a question, but also a comment for you. Laurent Goldstein says, the books are all good in their own way. It is good to have them all. Fantastic investment.
You can come to my every seminar.
Well, it gets better. He wants to connect with you about a TV series, Life by the Sea, and wants to know in the next couple of weeks when you would be available. So.
Oh, well, that's great. Well, yes, message me, so I'll message him back. And
okay.
Well, thank you very much for that. It's a wonderful life. I can't tell you the friends you'll make, but it's an adventurous life. You know, you get out of your comfort zone. Locally, you've just been meeting with friends. As soon as you go further afield, you're into that random adventure. And people will say, well, where did you enjoy the most? Well, there are certain places that you can say you have to go there. It's absolutely marvelous. But very often it's just the unique thing that's happened that you'd never dreamt would happen. And you end up with this wonderful evening of local entertainment and food and just terrific people. And with other cruisers, maybe you'll go on meeting them up the way. So do go cruising. It's a bit daunting. If you're new to it, getting north of Desolation, it looks a bit inhibiting, but it's very doable with time and monitoring weather, and then just enjoy.
Wonderful. Thank you, Liza. And thank you for joining us today. We are interested in your feedback, either on this seminar or if you have ideas on topics that you would like us to cover in the future. Simply click on the Evaluate tab located just above the seminar description and complete the form. After the show, all attendees will also receive a post-show survey. Be sure to check out all of the features at Vancouver International Boat Show Virtual. If you have a question, check out our info booth. Thank you and have a great day at the boat show. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone. See you tomorrow, maybe, cruising for couples. Bye.